Hello, welcome and welcome back. This is Jacob and today we are gonna be finishing off the narrations for the different memory mappings in IS3, aka Mizuki and Karula Arbor. So with this video, we are now completely done with the memory mappings. The playlist for them is now complete. So if you're someone who hasn't seen the previous ones and just wants to binge through all of them or see specific ones, the playlist is linked in the description of the video at the very top, together with the now also completed playlist for the different endings of IS3. So, enjoy the journey through these alternative timelines of events. And speaking of, a quick reminder that the vast majority of endings, and the vast majority in the memory mappings, is all part, or rather are all stories that are part of different timelines, all portraying the events of a struggle against the Seaborn that are essentially advancing on land and humanity is being pushed back, or we see in some cases even stalemates. But they're all, outside of small little things like ending number 1 being a canonical event, parts of different timelines. Now, with that said, the memory mapping today for Mizuki is very similar to how Skadi's was prior. Skadi, as a reminder, in her memory mapping had 3 separate stories. The memory mappings usually are one cohesive story told through 3 separate parts. However, Skadi received 3 separate stories. Mizuki here did get the same treatment essentially. All 3 parts are all 3 different stories. Now, one of those stories will be very well breaking the mold of the usual, and you'll see what that is, and I will point that out as well once we are done with today's part. But for now, let us proceed into part 1. This is memory number 8 for Mizuki, titled End of Innocence. And it says here on the left, whether there comes a day when we rise up to rebel against the unsolvable conundrum that has been handed to us. And we continue on with part 1, story 1. Be it the corrupting heart, the never-melting glacier, or the creeping branch, none of them still exist today. The primordial lifespring has already lost control. After Ishar Mla and Mizuki were both injured, he devoured the firstborn one by one, and became the sole absolute. He converts our lives into resources, faithfully regulating them and ensuring their comprehensiveness. All existence is ever so neatly ordered, for almost everything that refuses to be part of this order has been eradicated. Humans fail to even erect their last line of defense, the ocean submerging the land beneath their feet in an instant. Terra is now the ideal ecosystem for the Seaborn. In a corner of this vast paradise, the Seaborns, once known as Mizuki and the Doctor, hide in a cave, avoiding being annexed by the Order. In such an ecosystem, names are disorder, nostalgia is disorder, and sorrow is also disorder. What about the others? Amia and Calcit? How about the other Rhode Island friends? Are there any survivors? Even being able to squeeze out thoughts like those is a luxury. Perhaps the only time when thought is worthy of those precious extra nutrients is when feeding is taking place. The Doctor wordlessly gnaws at the appendage Mizuki has just cut from his own body. At first it would shed tears, whimper, and sometimes even cry hysterically while feeding. But these emotions and behaviors were clearly maladaptive to survival, and though it took some time, it eventually got over it. Or perhaps it was finally engulfed by the enclosed environment and protracted silence and numbness that it was thrust in. Mizuki cannot console the Doctor. Of course, he knows that it is a bridge too far to offer his own flesh and blood to the Doctor so that it may live, but he is even less willing to accept the Doctor's death. Nevertheless, all the flower, plants, mushrooms, and even the water source itself have been assimilated into components of the life spring, turned into shining specks of fluorescent light symbolic of the order he has woven, let alone the sea monsters that were once creatures. No longer is there any more normal food. All of Terra has been absorbed into the glowing ocean itself. Mizuki is only barely able to decompose the special tissue he ingested into simple nutrients. That is to say, he may be the only safe food remaining. Mizuki does not expect the doctor to accept his proposal at that time. Is it a result of survival instinct temporarily overwhelming the dignity of being human during extreme hunger? Is it because he does not want to die in front of Mizuki, to waste that which he snatched back from the jaws of death with his own life? No, the reason does not matter, as long as the doctor can live on. But for how long will these days continue? And for how long can they hold on? Mizuki smiles bitterly within his heart. He hopes that in a different time and a different place, the doctor will not be reduced to this inevitable end with him. Part 2, Story 2. He thinks, he has thought, he will continue to think. He will simultaneously receive several different answers at once, and receives his answer before they arrive. He has been sublimated, but only his body can be bound by the fetters of time, not his thought. At some point, these thoughts arrive in Mizuki's mind in a stochastic state. It is as if he himself exists in flux at this moment. If one could clearly know the answers pertaining to the future, that could indeed allow him to make the correct decisions. But as a lifeform bound to this dimension, his body and mind cannot transcend the fetters of time. For Mizuki, these hazy probabilistic forks in the road manifest only after a decision is made, presenting themselves as possibilities in the form of memories. At that time, the option of choosing again will no longer exist, their presence bringing little more than regret or fortuity. Mizuki rejects such regret and fortuity. He and his powers are nothing special, and from his current perspective, he is nothing more than one of many possibilities for the future. One that violates his original intentions, that obviously cannot be humanity's ideal ending. However, the decisions that were made that gave rise to the possibility of his birth were presumably set in motion by some version of himself along with the doctor, with some necessity or rationale in mind. As such, there is no need to treat each other with hostility, rather than as friends who made different choices, always leaving each other with some vague ideas to think about afterwards. Mizuki even had a flash of inspiration while playing a game, deciding to give him a name. And when Mizuki mentions these things to the doctor and is able to share the stories that have almost become reality, it has been many long years since they faced the problems that lay beyond the sea together. Part 3, Story 3. On a Bolivarian shoreline unknown to man, two sea terrors that have difficulty identifying due to mimicry have affixed themselves to the surrounding reefs, letting the waves beat against them. They seem to harbor no hostility toward other creatures, simply anchored there like timeless statues. Rhode Island still has a few more stops around Colombia. In addition to wandering around cities to enjoy certain aspects of regional culture that can't be found on Rhode Island, Mizuki, who has snuck out, occasionally comes to these remote locations, sitting on the reef while hugging his knees, listening to the sounds of the waves or the wordless whispers of the sea terrors. Are you guys trying to assess the weather by observing the clouds? Mizuki can tell that the two of them are looking up at the sky in a certain way, but their visual organs are so delicate and unique, as if capable of reaching far beyond the clouds. The purpose of them doing this is fascinating after all, as the sea terrors have little to do with the sky above. Though some sea terrors have already tried suspending themselves mid-air to swim through the ether, the flocks of soaring fowl beasts are far from a rich source of nutrients for nurturing their kind, and the practice of looking downward is maladaptive to the life within the ocean. We do not care about the weather. We are waiting. The two sea terrors remain motionless, just as they have for most of their lives. They neither possess nor need extra vocal organs. They have their own ways of transmitting the information they wish to convey to their kind. What purpose drives some sea terrors to evolve into these rock-like forms to continually stand watch beneath the clouds? Mizuki immediately understands that the reason behind this weighty mission might not be something easily explained in a few words. He doesn't ask any more questions and stands up to leave. At that moment, a number of incomprehensible anomalies appears in the sky. Gaps rupturing in the sky, scintillating bursts of ionizing radiation, even never before seen. Was this their doing? No, there's no way a couple of sea terrors would have the power to influence this space far beyond their reach. Their only purpose is to observe. Did someone else do something? And why? Might it be Columbia in that direction? And what exactly was that? When Mizuki finally comes to his senses once more, the two sea terrors have long since disappeared. Perhaps they were eager to return to their lair to deliver a message to their kin. One that may have taken hundreds of years to prepare for the sake of expanding their evolutionary strategy. And with that, we have completed all of the memory mappings. So, in a quick summary, and why this memory mapping, like I said at the beginning, is sort of breaking the mold. I think part 3 showed you why. But in a quick summary, well, part 1 definitely deserves the stamp of bad end. This is a timeline where everything went to shit. There is no better way to describe that. That is a depressing timeline. As I do like that they say here the only two Seaborn left in a cave are Mizuki and the Doctor. However, I do want to remind that Mizuki is already a Seaborn, he's just in human shape. But yes, the Doctor also got turned, and oh my god, is this depressing. The only food source, the clean food source, being Mizuki himself. Ugh. Oh boy. I do not want to set myself mentally into that position that the Doctor has to be. My god. Anyway, depressing timeline out of the way. Part 2. Part 2 is something that I would suggest if you want more context on this one, considering that this one, if you read again through it, does seem to be taking place in the timeline of ending number 4, essentially telling us a sort of companion piece story to ending 4 story, as it does end on two very things that connect to that very same ending, and that is the notion that Mizuki gives a name to him being capital here once again, and Mizuki telling the Doctor about all the stories that could have become, all the possibilities that could have been. But it has been so many years since they faced the problems in the past that it doesn't matter at that place, at that point. But yeah, this one seems to be taking place and just shows like how evolved that form of Mizuki must have been in that timeline. That Seaborn version, that firstborn Seaborn version of himself was so far advanced that it was probably calculating impossible impossible calculations of potential futures, maybe even through those calculations seeing all those possible and futures that may or may not exist. As a reminder, the memory mappings and the endings are obviously not canonical, like I said before, but the Doctor essentially, it is implied very, very heavily that the Doctor is essentially observing or seeing these things through Mizuki's help and the use of a stele that they find on their journey, and they're essentially observing together the different timelines. So we have something that seems to be a supercomputer essentially calculating different timelines and events and whatever the hell. But in this timeline we have a being, a singular organic being that is capable of doing that same thing. That is mind-breaking. Now, the thing that breaks the mold here, part 3, canon. If you ask me, I'm gonna die on this hill with a flag in hand. This is 100% canon. Describing the events, essentially, of Lone Trail at the very end, the sky being ruptured apart, and the true sky being seen for the first time. We also get the lines of Rhode Island being around Columbia, doing their thing, Mizuki sneaking out and just having a moment for himself. But also, very interestingly, Sea Terrors have been, maybe this is not the only spot, but these two Sea Terrors have been left behind to observe the sky and wait. They're essentially waiting on a signal, and the signal in this case is the barrier being ruptured, opened, and the true sky shining through, which means for the Sea Terrors now, very similar to Ending 4, they got the signal of we can leave. Start the evolutionary process. Start evolving. We have a goal now, and it's in reach. We can leave the planet. Now, unbeknownst to them, the barrier will obviously close after a while. Now, how long will that take? That is up to debate. But they have received a signal that it has been ruptured once, which means they can do it again. Or maybe they don't even need to do that. Maybe they can just leave and they don't need the barrier to open. Maybe they can evolve to that specific level of evolution where they will not even care that there is a barrier in the way. But that is something that will not happen today, tomorrow, in the next 10 years, next 100 years. That is something that will happen in the next 1,000, 2, 3 plus years. As we've seen in Ending 4, the evolution of Mizuki took millennia. Here, it's probably gonna take the same amount of time. The question is, will we see something about that mentioned in the future? But this is it. This is the final thing. So all I can say is thank you very much for listening and watching all of these memory mappings and the endings of IS4, hanging out on the streams. And speaking about streams, considering that this game mode is now done, I'm looking forward to IS4. What else to say? And obviously that will be streamed here on the channel once that goes live on the global side of things. And just like with IS3, I will be doing this type of coverage. I'll be doing live streams, like I just said, live playthroughs through it, reading everything, theorizing on a lot of stuff, and yeah, this has been fantastic. What else to say? Compared to IS2, this has been great. Even though the stories were super depressing all around, this has been a good read-through, an interesting read-through, and I hope they deliver with IS4 when it drops. I have no idea what the stories are going to be about. The only thing that I do know about it is that it is canonically tied to a very certain object over there in the ice fields that will lead us to a very certain new game. Am I vague enough? Probably. I don't need to be, but I'll do it that way anyway. Anyway, I'm looking forward to IS4 when it releases. Gonna be playing it, like I said, reading everything there is in there, theorizing, enjoying myself, and I hope you guys are gonna drop by the streams when that comes around. Until then, other streams are gonna continue on the channel, and all I can say is thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed. Please consider leaving a like on the video, that will help a lot. And if you're new to the channel, like I just said, stick around, there's much more coming in the future. And if you want to support me and my work more directly, there are memberships on the channel. And as always, no video will be behind a membership, it is literally just there to offer more support. So thank you very much, and thank you for the members that are already there. And I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, bye bye.